let's explore this net present value problem. And I'm going to illustrate the solution in two different ways. The first way I'm going to illustrate it is I will use the net present value function built into Excel. And then the second way is I'm going to actually use the formulas that you see here to calculate it. Although I'll show you the numbers in Excel. If you were working this by hand, you certainly could just do this with a regular calculator. All right, so there's the problem written in front of you. About 6 years ago, Riley Enterprises incurred $45,000 to increase its store's capacity. Back then, it thought the increase in capacity would increase cash flows by $6,000. Looking back, though, the company believed the increase in capacity resulted in cash flow increases by $8,000 in each of the last 6 years. Okay? The company's desired rate of return is 10%, and you're asked, what's the net present value actually achieved? All right, so I've laid the time periods here. 0 would be today. We assume it's right now, but we can look back and say, well, 8 years ago it was $45,000. And then now we believe $8,000 was earned every year for 6 years. Okay, the rate is 10%, and I've solved the net present value here, but let me delete that. Well, first I'll hit the F2 key so you can see what it looks like. Okay, so we use that formula, but I wouldn't recommend doing that. I'd recommend coming up here, but you can't do that because I've got a compound formula. If you click there, all you're going to get is, hey, what do you want to do? This kind of pop-up. So let me do this from scratch for you. So what we would say is you'd go equal NPV, and I like to hit the left parenthesis, then I hit this insert function button right here. It brings up my function arguments, and then I just point to where they are. Okay, the rate is given in cell C13, and then for the values, what you do is you start at the first one, and they want periods 1. It has to be a future period. You don't include the initial cash outflow. You just highlight it. Okay, so that array goes in there. Excel knows what to do. Now, if I hit enter at this point, all I have is the present value of the future cash flows. So the last thing you have to do is add in the negative or subtract out the initial cash flow. So I'm going to hit the F2, which is the edit button in Excel. And I hit the plus sign and then point to that negative 45,000. And that's how I get the answer, 10,157.91 cents. You really could eliminate the decimal points if you wanted and come up with 10,158. Now let's say you didn't have Excel available to you and you wanted to determine this using calculations, using the formulas. Well, you could do that. Look what it says. It says NPV is equal to negative of the initial investment and then the formulas. So the first initial investment is the $45,000. That's negative. Then this would be the cash flow for period 1 divided by 1 plus the rate. So cash flow for the first period is $8,000. So I'll just say equals C8,000, and then I'm going to divide it over 1 plus the rate. So I'll hit 10%. I'm going to hit the F4 to lock it in so that I can just copy this formula down. So what's it saying? It says take the value in C6 divided by 1 plus 10%. But of course, if you just did this with a calculator, you could just enter it and write down this term. Okay? Now, once I have that, I can copy this down to all these periods. I've got something not working right. Oh, yeah, one mistake here. Let me delete this here. If I'm going to copy it down, I can't say 1 plus R. I have to take it to the power of the period we're in. Now, they left the 1 off, but we could take it to a power of 1. Okay? And now when I do that, I think we're going to get different answers. A decreasing answer, which would make sense because the present value of an amount decreases as the time goes on. Now I'm just going to format these for you with no sense. Okay, and if I then sum this, I should come up with exactly the same answer, or possibly off due to rounding. Okay, and there's the same answer. All right, so that's just a quick illustration to show you how you would calculate this using Excel functions or just using the actual mathematical functions and summing it as you go. Okay? I hope you found that helpful.